The stars were different now. Admiral Jinwoo stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the vast darkness of space. His eyes, no longer completely human, could see things that normal eyes could not. They glowed with a soft blue light as he watched the distant galaxies spin in their ancient dance. 500,000 years. That's how long it had been since his people fled from Earth. 500,000 years since the aliens called the Vorlani turned their beautiful blue world into a ball of melted glass and death. "Admiral," said Commander Minji, walking up beside him. Her voice was calm, but Jinwoo could hear the excitement hidden underneath. "All fleets are in position. The final count is 50,000 ships carrying 200 million of our people." Jinwoo nodded slowly. 200 million. It seemed like a lot, but once there had been billions of humans on Earth. Now these were all that remained of pure humanity in the entire universe. The rest of their kind had either died or changed so much over the centuries that they were no longer really human at all. "And our scouts?" Jinwoo asked. "Captain Daehyun's ship returned an hour ago. The intelligence is confirmed. The Vorlani Empire still controls 10,000 star systems. Earth is still dead, kept as what they call a monument to their victory." The words hit Jinwoo like a physical blow, even though he had expected them. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was still a burned wasteland. The Vorlani kept it that way, on purpose to remind everyone in the galaxy what happened to species that opposed them. But the Vorlani had made one mistake. They thought all humans were dead. Jinwoo's ship, the Vengeance of Terra, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its hull was made of living metal that could heal itself and change shape. The weapons were powered by controlled quantum explosions. The crew members had modified their own bodies so they could connect directly to the ship's computer systems. This technology had taken 500,000 years to develop. While the Vorlani grew fat and lazy ruling their empire, humanity had been learning, growing, and preparing for this moment. "Signal all fleet commanders," Jinwoo said. "Begin Phase 1. Around him, the bridge crew began working. These were not the soft humans who had once lived on Earth. 500,000 years of hard living in the cold depths of space had changed them. They were taller, stronger, and faster than their ancestors. Their bones were laced with programmable matter that made them nearly unbreakable. Their minds were linked together in a network that let them share thoughts and memories instantly. Lieutenant Nari looked up from her station. She was in charge of the biological weapon systems, and her expertise was terrifying even to her own people. "Admiral, the infiltration teams are ready. We have operatives who can change their appearance to match any known alien species." "Good. What about our virus weapons?" "Ready, sir. The Reaper seeds can rewrite the genetic code of any carbon-based life form. The Vorlani bio-integrated technology will turn against them the moment we release these weapons into their systems." Captain Sunho, the youngest officer on the bridge, raised his hand. "Admiral, are we really going to use those weapons? The Reaper seeds will kill billions of innocent people, not just Vorlani soldiers." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew this question would come up eventually. Jinwoo turned to face the young captain. In Sunho's eyes, he could still see traces of the old human compassion, the mercy that had once made their species great. "Captain," Jinwoo said quietly, "do you remember the memory recordings from Earth's final days?" Sunho nodded. Every human in the fleet carried the genetic memories of their ancestors. They could remember, as clearly as if they had been there themselves, the day the Vorlani ships appeared in Earth's sky. They could feel the terror of the civilians as the glass bombs began to fall. They could hear the screams of children as their world melted around them. "The Vorlani showed no mercy to our children," Jinwoo continued. "They glassed entire continents just to make a point. Billions of humans died in agony while the Vorlani filmed it for entertainment." The Admiral's voice grew harder. "We are not here for conquest, Captain. We are not here to build an empire. We are here for justice. And justice, after 500,000 years, looks very much like revenge." Dr. Yunji, the fleet's chief scientist and historian, spoke up from her station. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the Vorlani Empire's current structure. They've grown weak and complacent. Most of their military leaders have never faced a real threat. Their technology has barely advanced in the last 100,000 years, while ours has surpassed theirs in every way, added Commander Minji. Our ships can phase between dimensions. Our weapons can manipulate the basic forces of reality. Our people have become something beyond what baseline humanity ever was. Jinwoo walked to the main display screen, which showed a map of the local galaxy. Red dots marked Vorlani military bases, trade routes, and colony worlds. There were thousands of them, spread across dozens of star systems. The Vorlani think they are the masters of this galaxy, he said. For 500,000 years they have crushed anyone who opposed them. They have enslaved dozens of species. They have strip-mined entire worlds. They have committed genocide on a scale that makes their destruction of Earth seem small. He touched. The screen in the display zoomed in on a particular system. But they made one crucial error. They thought that destroying Earth meant destroying humanity's potential for growth. They never imagined that the survivors would become something more dangerous than they ever were before. Around the bridge, the crew was making final preparations. The humans had learned patience during their long exile. This attack had been planned for thousands of years, with every detail carefully considered. Captain Daehyun appeared on the communication screen. His ship, the Shadow of Seoul, was one of the most advanced stealth vessels in the human fleet. Admiral, my reconnaissance teams have identified the first targets. The Vorlani have a supply depot at Kepler 442. Minimal defenses, but it supports their operations in 12 systems. Acknowledged. Commander Minji, signal the Phantom Wing, begin the ghost attacks. The Phantom Wing was a group of ships that could become completely invisible and intangible. They could pass through solid matter like ghosts, appearing only when they wanted to strike. The Vorlani had no defense against this technology because they didn't even know it was possible. Admiral, said Lieutenant Nari, the bio-infiltration teams are also ready. I can have operatives inside Vorlani command centers within days. They'll never know we're there until it's too late. Jinwoo smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Then let's remind the galaxy why humanity was once feared before we learned to be victims. The first phase of the operation was simple. Make the Vorlani afraid. For 500,000 years they had lived without fear, secure in their power and dominance. The humans were going to change that. Over the next several weeks, Vorlani outposts began to disappear. Ships would go silent without warning. Colonies would report strange equipment failures and mysterious illnesses. Most disturbing of all, some Vorlani commanders received messages in ancient human languages, messages that said simply, "We remember." Emperor Kethvar, ruler of the Vorlani Empire, was not yet concerned. His empire was vast, and losing a few remote outposts was not unusual. Pirates and rebels attacked imperial facilities all the time. His military advisors assured him that these incidents were just random raids by desperate scavengers. But War Prince Vexthor, the Empire's greatest military mind, was starting to worry. The attacks were too coordinated, too precise. Someone was hunting them, and that someone had technology the Empire had never seen before. Meanwhile, aboard the Vengeance of Terra, Admiral Jinwoo was watching reports from the infiltration teams. Lieutenant Nari had successfully placed operatives inside 3 major Vorlani command centers. These operatives looked like Vorlani, smelled like Vorlani, and even had Vorlani genetic markers. But they were humans, modified at the cellular level to be perfect spies. The corruption viruses are spreading through their networks, Nari reported. In another week, we'll be able to access their military communications, their supply routes, even their personal files. Dr. Yoonji was studying the genetic samples their spies had collected. Fascinating. The Vorlani have barely evolved at all in the last 500,000 years. They're exactly the same as they were when they destroyed Earth. No improvements, no adaptations. They've grown soft, while we have become something they cannot imagine, said Commander Minji. We are stronger, faster, smarter, and more ruthless than any humans who ever lived on Earth. Captain Sunho, who had been quiet since their earlier conversation, finally spoke. Admiral, I've been thinking about what you said, about justice and revenge. Are they really the same thing after so much time? Jinwoo looked at the young officer. What do you think, Captain? I think... Sunho paused, choosing his words carefully. I think that justice is about making things right, but revenge is about making someone pay. And after 500,000 years, I'm not sure anyone who destroyed Earth is still alive to pay for it. You're right, Jinwoo said. The individual, Forlani who burned our world are long dead. But their empire lives on. Their culture celebrates what they did to us. They still keep Earth as a monument to our defeat. The children learn in school about how they made. The message from the humans spread through the Vorlani Empire like a virus. On 1,000 worlds, military commanders stared at their communication screens in shock and disbelief. Humans? But humanity was extinct. Everyone knew that. The history books were clear about it. Emperor Kethvar sat on his crystal throne in the heart of his palace on Vexthulan Prime. The throne room was massive, with walls made of pure starlight that had been somehow frozen into solid form. Around him, his advisors whispered nervously to each other. Impossible, muttered General Thakmor, the Emperor's chief military advisor. We glassed their entire world. Nothing could have survived that level of destruction. War Prince Vexthor was not so certain. He was older than most Vorlani, and he had studied the ancient records more carefully than his peers. Some ships escaped before the final bombardment, he said quietly. We always knew that. But they were just refugees with primitive technology. How could they have become a threat? 500,000 years, said Dr. Yilnara, the Empire's chief scientist. That's a very long time for any species to develop new technologies, especially if they were motivated by revenge. Emperor Kethvar raised a hand for silence. Find them, he commanded. I want to know where these supposed humans are hiding. I want to know how many ships they have, what weapons they carry, and how they manage to attack our outposts without being detected. But finding the human fleet was proving impossible. Their ships could phase in and out of normal space, becoming invisible and intangible when they wanted to hide. The Vorlani had no technology that could track them. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the real war was just beginning. Special Operative Nari floated in the void between stars, her body protected by a biosuit that was more alive than artificial. She was part of the human infiltration teams, and her mission was the most dangerous of all. She had to get inside Vorlani research stations and corrupt their systems from within. Nari's body had been modified so extensively that she barely resembled a baseline human anymore. Her cells could change their structure at will, allowing her to mimic any carbon-based life form. Her bones were hollow like a bird's, but filled with computational equipment instead of air. Her blood carried microscopic machines that could repair injuries or enhance her abilities as needed. The Vorlani research station Epsilon 7 hung in space ahead of her, its lights glowing like a small star. It was one of the Empire's most advanced facilities, where their best scientists worked on new weapons and defenses. Nari activated her camouflage systems and began to change. Her skin shifted from human pink to Vorlani purple. Her bones lengthened and her muscles rearranged themselves. Within minutes, she looked exactly like a Vorlani researcher. Getting inside the station was easy. The Vorlani had grown so arrogant over the centuries that they barely bothered with security. They couldn't imagine anyone being bold enough to attack them directly. Once inside, Nari began her work. She moved through the corridors like she belonged there, nodding politely to other researchers. Her modified cells were producing pheromones that smelled exactly like those of a high-ranking Vorlani scientist. In the main computer core, Nari placed her hand on the central processing unit. Microscopic tendrils emerged from her palm, burrowing into the machine's circuits. The Reaper seeds began their work immediately, rewriting the station's programming at the most basic level. Within hours, the research station's systems would begin to turn against their users. Weapons would target Vorlani personnel instead of enemies. Life support systems would start producing toxic gases. Communication arrays would broadcast human propaganda instead of official reports. But Nari's work was just beginning. She had 17 more stations to infiltrate before the next phase of the operation could begin. In another part of space, Commander Hyunki was leading a different kind of mission. His Void Hunter squadron consisted of 12 ships that could move faster than light without using conventional jump drives. Instead, they slipped through gaps in reality itself, appearing wherever they wanted to strike. Hyunki's target was a Vorlani patrol fleet that was investigating the recent mysterious disappearances. The Vorlani commander, Admiral Zekthul, had 50 ships under his command and decades of combat experience. He thought he was hunting pirates or rebels. He had no idea he was about to face an enemy that had spent 500,000 years perfecting the art of war. All ships, phase shift on my mark, Hyunki commanded. His crew responded instantly, their minds linked together in a network that allowed them to coordinate perfectly. The human ships vanished from normal space, slipping sideways into a dimension where the laws of physics worked differently. They could move through solid matter and travel at incredible speeds while in this phase state. Admiral Zekthul was studying his tactical displays when his ships began to explode. The humans materialized inside the Vorlani formation, their weapons already firing. But these were not normal weapons. They shot streams of liquid fire that could burn through any known material. They launched projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions at once, making them impossible to defend against. "Red alert!" Zekthul shouted, but it was already too late. Half his fleet was burning. His remaining ships were trying to return fire, but their weapons passed right through the human vessels. Hyunki's ship, the Soul's Revenge, appeared directly in front of the Vorlani flagship. At this range, even the admiral could see the human ship clearly. It was beautiful and terrible, like a living work of art made from metal and starlight. "Unknown vessel," Zekthul transmitted. "Identify yourself and state your intentions." Hyunki's reply came back in perfect Vorlani. "We are the children of Earth and we remember what you did to our world. This is your punishment." The Soul's Revenge fired a single shot. The projectile passed through the flagship's shields as if they didn't exist, then exploded inside the ship's reactor core. The massive vessel broke apart in a ball of purple fire that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Admiral Zekthul died without ever understanding what had killed him. This pattern repeated itself across dozens of systems. Vorlani patrols would receive distress calls from remote outposts, but when they arrived to investigate, they found nothing but empty space and floating debris. Sometimes they would catch glimpses of strange ships that moved like ghosts, but their sensors couldn't get a solid lock on them. Back on Vexthulan Prime, Emperor Kethvar was growing increasingly frustrated. Reports were coming in from across his empire. Military stations were malfunctioning. Research facilities were going offline. Entire fleets were disappearing without sending distress signals. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We have the most advanced military in the galaxy. How can a few refugee ships cause this much damage?" War Prince Vexthor studied the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. "Your Majesty, I don't think these are refugee ships. The attack patterns are too sophisticated. The technology they're using is beyond anything in our database." Dr. Yilnara had been analyzing the wreckage from the few battles where human ships had been detected. "Sire, I've found traces of materials that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics. These weapons manipulate matter at the quantum level. Their ships appear to be partially organic, capable of self-repair and adaptation." The Emperor's advisors began to argue among themselves. Some wanted to increase military patrols. Others suggested negotiating with the attackers. A few even whispered about retreating to the Empire's core worlds and abandoning the outer territories. But Emperor Kethvar had not built the largest empire in galactic history by backing down from threats. "Double the patrols," he ordered. "Recall all our reserve fleets. If these humans want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." He had no way of knowing that the humans had been intercepting his communications for weeks. Every order he gave, every troop movement he planned, was known to Admiral Jinwoo within hours. Lieutenant Sunho was monitoring the Vorlani response from his station aboard the Vengeance of Terra. "Admiral, they're mobilizing their Grand Armada. Intelligence suggests over 10,000 ships, including their most advanced dreadnoughts." Admiral Jinwoo smiled coldly. "Good. Let them gather their forces. It will make the next phase more efficient. Doctor, Yunji looked up from her biological warfare station. Admiral, the virus weapons are ready for deployment. Once activated, the Vorlani bio-integrated systems will begin attacking their own users. Their ships will become death traps. Their cities will become prisons. Their bodies will begin to change in ways they never imagined. And our infiltrators, Nari's teams have successfully compromised 47 major installations, Commander Minji reported. The corruption viruses are spreading through their networks. Within days, we'll have access to their most classified information. Captain Daehyun appeared on the communication screen. Admiral, my reconnaissance teams have located the Vorlani, Emperor's personal fleet. They're moving toward the Kepler Nexus, probably hoping to draw us into a major battle. Jinwoo studied the tactical display. The Kepler Nexus was a strategic choke point that controlled access to 12 systems. If the Vorlani could force a battle there, they might be able to use their numerical advantage effectively. They're thinking like the old empire, he mused. Mass their forces, meet the Yen. The Nexus of Korvac was one of the most important systems in the Vorlani Empire. It controlled the supply routes to over 30 colony worlds and housed the Empire's largest military shipyard. If the Vorlani lost Korvac, they would lose control of an entire sector. Admiral Jinwoo knew this, which was why he chose it for humanity's first major battle in 500,000 years. The human fleet emerged from phase space in perfect formation. 50,000 ships appeared as if from nowhere, their hulls gleaming with biometallic armor that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. These were not the crude vessels that had fled Earth so long ago. These ships were works of art and science, combined, each one a masterpiece of technology that the galaxy had never seen before. Fleet Commander Zarketh was in charge of defending Korvac. He had 8,000 ships under his command and had never lost a battle in his 300-year career. When his sensors detected the massive human fleet, his first reaction was confusion rather than fear. Analysis. He ordered his tactical officer. Sir, I'm reading. This is impossible. These ships are using technology we don't recognize. Their hulls appear to be partially organic. My sensors can't get a clear reading on their weapon systems. Zarketh studied the tactical display. With growing unease, the human ships were arranged in patterns that made no sense according to standard military doctrine. They seemed to be floating in space without any visible means of propulsion, yet they were clearly under precise control. Open a channel, he commanded. Unknown fleet, you are in violation of Imperial space. Identify yourselves and state your business here. Admiral Jinwoo's response came immediately, broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in the system could hear it. When he spoke, it was in perfect High Vorlani, the ancient ceremonial language that only the most educated members of their species knew. Fleet Commander Zarketh of the 5th Imperial Battle Group, we meet at last. I am Admiral Jinwoo of the Terran Expeditionary Force. We are here to reclaim what was stolen from us 500,000 years ago. The words hit Zarketh like a physical blow. Terran, that meant Earth. But Earth was a dead world, glassed and lifeless. There were no Terrans left in the universe. Impossible, he transmitted back. The Terrans are extinct. We destroyed their world completely. Jinwoo's laugh echoed across the communication channels. It was not a pleasant sound. You destroyed our world, yes. You killed billions of our people. You filmed their deaths for entertainment. But you made one crucial mistake. Fleet Commander, you assumed that destroying our home meant destroying our potential. As he spoke, the human ships began to move. But they didn't move like normal vessels. Instead of using conventional engines, they seemed to slip sideways through space, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. You see, Fleet Commander, you taught us a valuable lesson that day. You showed us what happens to species that are not strong enough to protect themselves. You demonstrated the price of weakness, of compassion, of believing that mercy has any place in the universe. Zarketh was trying to lock weapons on the human ships, but his targeting systems couldn't maintain a solid lock. The enemy vessels kept phasing in and out of normal space, making them impossible to hit with conventional weapons. We took that lesson to heart, Jinwoo continued. For 500,000 years we have grown stronger. We have modified our bodies, enhanced our minds, and developed technologies that your species cannot even comprehend. We have become something beyond what baseline humanity ever was. The first human ship to open fire was the Soul's Revenge, commanded by Captain Hyunki. Its weapons looked like streams of liquid starlight, and when they hit Vorlani vessels, the results were devastating. The energy beams passed right through the enemy shields as if they weren't there, then began dissolving, the ships from the inside out. "All ships open fire," Zarketh ordered. "Target the largest enemy vessels." 8,000 Vorlani ships fired simultaneously. The space around Korvac lit up like a small sun as energy beams, plasma bolts, and missile streams converged on the human fleet. But the weapons passed right through empty space. The human ships had phased out of normal reality at the exact moment of impact, letting the Vorlani waste their ammunition on nothing. "Phase shift complete," reported Commander Minji, aboard the Vengeance of Terra. "All ships are now operating in quantum flux mode. Enemy weapons cannot affect us while we remain in phase." Admiral Jinwoo watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Vorlani were firing desperately at targets they couldn't hit while the human ships moved through their formation like ghosts, striking wherever they chose. "Dr. Yunji," he said, "begin the biological demonstration." Dr. Yunji activated her weapons console. Unlike the energy beams used by other human ships, her weapons fired clouds of microscopic organisms. These creatures were designed to eat through any known material, reproducing rapidly as they consumed their targets. The biological weapons struck 3 Vorlani cruisers simultaneously. At first nothing seemed to happen. Then the ship's hulls began to change color, shifting from metallic gray to organic green. Within minutes, the vessels were more plant than machine, their metal armor replaced by living tissue that pulsed with alien life. "What is that?" Zarketh demanded, staring at his display screen in horror. "Evolutionary acceleration," Jinwoo replied calmly. "We've compressed 1 billion years of natural selection into a few minutes. Your ships are becoming something new, something that serves our purposes instead of yours." The transformed Vorlani vessels suddenly turned their weapons on their former allies. But now their guns fired streams of acid and clouds of toxic spores instead of energy beams. The Vorlani crews inside were screaming over the communication channels as their own ships began to digest them alive. Captain Seungmin led the first boarding action of the battle. His assault ship, the Pusan's Fury, phased directly into the hull of a Vorlani dreadnought. The boarding party that emerged was a nightmare vision of what humanity had become. These soldiers were 7 feet tall, with bones that could stop bullets and muscles that could crush steel. Their eyes glowed with artificial light, and their movements were perfectly coordinated as they shared information through their neural links. They carried weapons that looked more grown than manufactured, organic tools that adapted to whatever resistance they faced. The Vorlani Marines tried to fight back, but they might as well have been children facing adults. The human soldiers moved too fast, hit too hard, and seemed to anticipate their enemy's every move. Within minutes, the dreadnought's command center had fallen. Captain Seungmin stood over the body of the Vorlani captain, then activated the ship's communication system. "This is Captain Seungmin of the Terran Marine Corps. This vessel now belongs to Earth's children. Any crew members who wish to surrender will be given the chance to serve our cause." But surrender was not something the Vorlani understood. They had been the dominant species in the galaxy for so long that the concept of defeat was foreign to them. Fleet Commander Zarketh watched his formation disintegrate around him. Ship after ship fell to the human weapons, which seemed to violate every law of physics he knew. Some vessels were dissolved by energy beams that passed through their shields. Others were consumed by biological weapons that turned them into living nightmares. Still others were boarded by soldiers who fought like demons from the old myths. "Retreat," he finally ordered. "All ships, fall back to the jump points." But the humans had anticipated this. Captain Daehyun's stealth ships had been waiting at the system's edge, invisible and undetected. As the surviving Vorlani vessels tried to escape, they found their escape routes blocked by enemies they couldn't see. "There is no retreat," Jinwoo's voice echoed across the communication channels. "There is no escape. You will face the same choice our ancestors faced when your ships appeared in Earth's sky: surrender or die." Admiral Jinwoo then did something that shocked even his own crew. He opened a direct channel to every Vorlani ship in the system and activated the holographic projectors. Suddenly, his image appeared on every screen, in every command center, visible to every survivor of the battle. The Vorlani saw a figure that was unmistakably human in origin, but changed in ways that were both beautiful and terrifying. Jinwoo was tall and lean, with skin that seemed to glow with internal light. His eyes were the most disturbing feature. They were completely black, like holes in reality itself, but they seemed to contain depths that went on forever. "Look at me," he said, and his voice carried a power that made it impossible to ignore. "Look at what you created. 500,000 years ago, humans were a peaceful species. We believed in mercy, in negotiation, in finding common ground with our enemies. We were weak." He gestured to the burning remains of the Vorlani fleet around him. "You cured us of that weakness. You taught us that the universe respects only strength, that mercy is a luxury that extinct species cannot afford. You showed us that survival requires the willingness to do whatever is necessary, no matter how terrible." Fleet Commander Zarketh stared at the human admiral in fascination and horror. This was not the soft, compassionate species that the history books described. This was something else entirely, something that had been forged in the cold depths of space by centuries of hatred and the desire for revenge. The news of Korvac's destruction spread through the Vorlani Empire like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, civilians stared at their communication screens in shock and disbelief. The Imperial fleet, which had never known defeat, had been crushed by an enemy that most people thought was extinct. Emperor Kethvar sat in his private chambers aboard the massive command ship Dominion of Stars. This vessel was the pride of the Imperial fleet, a city-sized dreadnought that served as both his palace and his ultimate weapon. Around him, the greatest military minds in the Empire were gathered for an emergency council of war. "The situation is worse than we initially believed," reported General Thakmor, his voice heavy with defeat. "Intelligence indicates that the humans have at least 50,000 ships, possibly more. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, and they seem to be immune to our conventional weapons." War Prince Vexthor studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. "Your Majesty, they're not just attacking our military installations. They're systematically dismantling our entire infrastructure. Trade routes, communication networks, supply depots. Everything is being targeted simultaneously." Dr. Yilnara had spent days analyzing the sensor data from various human attacks. "Sire, I believe we're facing something unprecedented. These humans have evolved beyond baseline biology. Their ships appear to be partially alive, capable of self-repair and adaptation. Their crews seem to share a collective consciousness that allows them to coordinate their actions perfectly." The Emperor's face was grim as he absorbed these reports. The Vorlani Empire had ruled the galaxy for 500,000 years, crushing anyone who dared to oppose them. The idea that they might actually lose this war was something he had never considered. "Then we use the final protocol," he declared. "Activate the planet killer weapons. If we cannot defeat these humans through conventional warfare, we'll destroy their fleet and every world they've touched." The final protocol was the Empire's most closely guarded secret. Deep in the heart of the Dominion of Stars, massive weapons. Systems had been built that could crack planets and render entire star systems uninhabitable. These weapons had never been used, but their existence had been enough to deter any serious rebellion for thousands of years. But what Emperor Kethvar didn't know was that Major Jisoo had been aboard his flagship for 3 months, disguised as a mid-level technical officer. She had used her modified biology to perfectly mimic a Vorlani female, complete with the correct pheromones and genetic markers. Her real identity was known only to Admiral Jinwoo himself. As the Emperor's technicians began preparing the planet-killer weapons, Jisoo was already at work. The Cascade virus she had developed was specifically designed to turn the Empire's most advanced systems against their users. It spread through computer networks like a living thing, rewriting code and changing programming at the fundamental level. The first sign of trouble came when the Dominion's targeting computers began displaying incorrect information. Instead of showing human fleet positions, they were showing major Vorlani colonies as priority targets. Technical malfunction, reported the chief weapons officer. The targeting system is showing our own worlds as enemy positions. Fix it, the Emperor ordered impatiently. But the technicians couldn't fix it because the problem wasn't a malfunction. The virus was rewriting the ship's basic programming in real time, turning the Empire's greatest weapon into a tool for their own destruction. Meanwhile, Admiral Jinwoo was preparing for the largest military operation in human history. The main human fleet had grown to 80,000 ships as long-dormant sleeper vessels were awakened and activated. These reserve fleets had been hidden in the void between galaxies, waiting for the signal to join the final assault. All task forces report. Ready, announced Commander Minji from her position at the tactical station. Vice Admiral Taehyung's force is in position to strike military installations. Rear Admiral Soo-young's liberation fleets are ready to free the enslaved populations. The main battle fleet stands ready for your orders. Jinwoo studied the strategic display with satisfaction. The Crimson Tide offensive was the culmination of 500,000 years of planning. Every detail had been calculated, every possible Vorlani response had been anticipated. Signal all commanders, he ordered. Begin the final phase. Show the galaxy what happens to species that commit genocide. The human attack began simultaneously across dozens of star systems. This was not the careful surgical strikes of the earlier phases. This was total war, conducted by a species that had evolved specifically to destroy their ancient enemies. Vice Admiral Taehyung led the assault on the Vorlani military stronghold at Zarian Prime. His task force consisted of 20,000 ships, each one equipped with weapons that could reshape matter at the atomic level. The Vorlani defenders never had a chance. Taehyung's flagship, the Incheon's Wrath, phased directly into the center of the enemy formation. Its bioweapons began releasing clouds of microscopic machines that converted everything they touched into raw materials for human use. Vorlani warships began dissolving, their metal hulls becoming nutrients for the living components of human vessels. This is Vice Admiral Taehyung to all Vorlani forces, he broadcast on all frequencies. You are facing the evolved descendants of the species you tried to exterminate. Surrender now and you will be allowed to serve our cause. Continue fighting, and you will be converted into resources for our war machine. But the Vorlani military had been trained never to surrender. They fought with desperate courage, even as their ships were consumed by weapons they couldn't understand. Taehyung watched their resistance with something approaching respect, but he had orders to follow. Rear Admiral Soo-young was conducting a very different kind of operation. Her liberation fleets were freeing the millions of enslaved beings that the Vorlani Empire had collected over the centuries. These were the survivors of dozens of conquered species, kept as workers and entertainment for their Vorlani masters. When Soo-young's ships appeared over the slave world of Kethmiran, the response was immediate chaos. The Vorlani overseers tried to kill their prisoners rather than let them be freed, but the human boarding parties moved too quickly. Colonel Kyung-hoon led the ground assault on the main prison complex. His soldiers were a terrifying sight, 7-foot-tall warriors in living armor that adapted to any threat. They moved through the prison corridors like angels of death, killing every Vorlani they encountered while carefully protecting the prisoners. All beings held against their will, Kyung-hoon announced over the facility's communication system, speaking in a dozen different languages. You are now under the protection of the Terran Liberation Forces. The Vorlani Empire's rule over you has ended. The freed prisoners stared at their rescuers in shock and awe. These humans were clearly not the same species that the Vorlani had supposedly exterminated long ago. They were something new, something that radiated power and confidence in equal measure. Dr. Nethera, a scientist from the enslaved Zephyrian species, approached Colonel Kyung-hoon with wonder in her crystal-like eyes. Are you truly the children of Earth? The legends say your world was destroyed ages ago. Kyung-hoon's response was delivered in perfect Zephyrian. Our world was destroyed, but we survived. We grew strong in the darkness between stars. Now we have returned to free all those who suffer under Vorlani tyranny. As word of the human liberation spread, species throughout the Empire began to rise in rebellion. The Zephyrian crystal singers used their natural abilities to disrupt Vorlani communication networks. The machine minds of the Nexus Collective turned their computational power to helping human fleet movements. The warrior poets of the Autumn Realm took up arms alongside human soldiers. But the most significant development was happening aboard the Dominion of Stars itself. Major Jisu's Cascade virus had spread throughout the flagship systems, and the planet-killer weapons were preparing to fire, but not at their intended targets. Emperor Kethvar stood in his command center, watching the charging indicators, with grim satisfaction. "Target the human fleet concentration in the Andromeda sector," he ordered. "Full power. I want nothing left but atoms." "Weapons charged and ready, Your Majesty," reported the chief weapons officer. "Firing in 10 seconds. But when the planet-killer weapon fired, its target was not the human fleet. Instead, the massive energy beam lanced out toward the Vorlani colony world of Tethmarin, home to 3 billion Imperial citizens. "What happened?" the Emperor demanded. "Why are we firing at our own people?" The weapons officer was frantically checking his displays. "I don't understand, Your Majesty. The targeting computer shows the human fleet, but the weapon fired at Tethmarin." Major Jisu, still disguised as a Vorlani technician, watched from her station with satisfaction. The Cascade virus was working perfectly, turning the Empire's greatest weapon into an instrument of their own destruction. Across the galaxy, similar incidents were occurring. Vorlani defense satellites began targeting their own ships. Military, computers started feeding false information to their operators. Communication networks began broadcasting human propaganda instead of imperial orders. Emperor Kethavar finally realized what was happening. "We've been infiltrated," he said grimly. "They have agents inside our most secure facilities." The final battle began at dawn on Vexthulan Prime, the homeworld of the Vorlani Empire. The sky above the capital city filled with ships as the human fleet emerged from phase space in perfect formation. 120,000 vessels surrounded the planet, their biometallic hulls gleaming in the light of the system's twin suns. Admiral Jinwu stood on the bridge of the Vengeance of Terra, watching as the last defenders of the Empire prepared to make their final stand. The Vorlani had gathered every ship they could find. Over 200,000 vessels formed a desperate sphere around their homeworld. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, and everyone knew it would decide the fate of two civilizations. "Admiral," reported Commander Minji, "all fleet elements are in position. The enemy has deployed everything they have. Intelligence suggests they're prepared to fight to the last ship." Jinwu nodded grimly. He had expected no less from the Vorlani. They were a proud species, and even facing certain defeat, they would not surrender without a fight. "Dr. Yunji, is Project Genesis reversed ready for deployment?" The chief scientist looked up from her station, her enhanced features showing a mixture of excitement and concern. "Yes, Admiral. The weapon is charged and targeted. But I must remind you that once activated, it cannot be stopped. The quantum dissolution field will destroy everything within a light-year radius." Project Genesis Reversed was humanity's ultimate weapon, developed over centuries of research into the fundamental nature of reality itself. It could unravel the quantum foundations of matter, reducing entire fleets to their component atoms. It was a weapon of such power that using it would change the balance of the galaxy forever. "Signal all human ships," Jinwu ordered. "Phase shift to quantum flux mode. We engage in 5 minutes." Across the human fleet, crews prepared for battle with the calm efficiency of warriors who had trained for this moment across multiple lifetimes. These were no longer baseline humans. They were something new, something designed specifically for war. Their enhanced bodies could survive in hard vacuum, their modified minds could process information faster than any computer, and their shared consciousness allowed them to coordinate their actions with perfect precision. Captain Daehyun, commanding the stealth ship Shadow of Soul, was already inside the Vorlani formation. His vessel was completely invisible to their sensors, phased into a dimension where conventional detection methods were useless. "Admiral, I have a clear view of their command structure," he reported. "Emperor Kethvar is aboard the Dominion of Stars, surrounded by their heaviest dreadnoughts. Major Jisoo is still in position and ready to assist." Major Jisoo had spent months aboard the Emperor's flagship, her modified biology allowing her to pass as a Vorlani officer. Now as the final battle began, she was preparing to strike from within. The first shot of the battle was fired by the Vorlani. Emperor Kethvar, desperate to salvage something from this disaster, ordered his entire fleet to attack simultaneously. 200,000 ships opened fire at once, filling space with energy beams, plasma bolts, and nuclear missiles. But the human fleet wasn't there to receive the attack. At the moment of firing, every human ship phased out of normal space, letting the Vorlani weapons pass through empty vacuum. "Now," Admiral Jinwoo commanded. The human ships materialized inside the Vorlani formation, their weapons already firing. But these were not ordinary weapons. The humans had learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level, creating beams that could dissolve molecular bonds and projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Vorlani ships began to disintegrate as the human weapons struck them. Their advanced armor and energy shields were useless against attacks that worked by unraveling the basic structure of matter itself. Captain Seungmin led the boarding assault on the Emperor's flagship. His troops phased directly through the Dominion's hull, appearing in the ship's corridors like ghosts made solid. The Vorlani Marines tried to fight back, but they were facing enemies who had evolved beyond their ability to comprehend. The human soldiers were 7 feet tall and moved with inhuman grace. Their armor was alive, adapting instantly to any threat. Their weapons seemed to think for themselves, striking with precision that no organic being should have been able to achieve. "Resistance is futile," Seungmin announced over the ship's communication system, speaking in perfect Vorlani. "You are fighting the children of Earth, and we have become everything you feared we might become." But as the battle raged, Dr. Yunji was making a disturbing discovery in her research lab aboard the Vengeance of Terra. The genetic modifications that had made humanity so powerful were having an unexpected side effect. "Admiral," she said urgently, "I need to show you something." Jinwoo turned from the tactical display where human ships were systematically destroying the Vorlani fleet. "What is it, Doctor?" "The memory enhancement virus we've all been carrying, the one that lets us remember Earth's destruction as if we were there ourselves. It's changing us. The genetic programming is becoming dominant over our natural neural patterns." She brought up a display showing brain scans of the human crew. "Look at these readings. Our ability to form new memories is being suppressed. Our capacity for emotions, other than anger and hatred, is diminishing. We're becoming locked in that moment of trauma, unable to move beyond it." The implications hit Jinwoo like a physical blow. The very modifications that had driven humanity's quest for revenge were making them incapable of anything else. They were becoming a species defined entirely by their past suffering, unable to imagine any future beyond vengeance. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Without intervention, complete psychological fixation will occur within days. We'll lose the ability to feel mercy, compassion, or even basic curiosity. We'll become perfect weapons, but we'll no longer be human in any meaningful sense." Captain Sunho, who had been monitoring the battle from his station, looked up with concern. "Admiral, what does this mean for the operation?" Jinwoo stared at the tactical display, where the Vorlani fleet was being systematically destroyed by his forces. They had achieved everything they had planned for 500,000 years. The empire that had murdered their world was falling. Their ancient enemies were being crushed, and justice was finally being served. But at what cost? If humanity lost its capacity for anything beyond vengeance, then they would become no better than the Vorlani themselves. Worse, perhaps, because their power was so much greater. "Admiral," Commander Minji reported, "the Vorlani fleet is down to less than 50,000 ships. The planet's surface defenses are offline. We can begin the final bombardment whenever. You're ready." Jinwoo looked down at the world below where 3 billion Vorlani civilians waited for death. They were not the same individuals who had destroyed Earth. Those Vorlani had been dead for centuries. These were their descendants, guilty only of being born into an empire built on genocide. "Sir?" Minji prompted. "Your orders?" For the first time in 500,000 years, Admiral Jinwoo hesitated. The genetic memories were screaming at him to complete the extermination, to repay genocide with genocide. But somewhere beneath the programmed hatred, a spark of original human compassion flickered. Captain Daehyun's voice crackled over the communication system. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the planet's surface. They're preparing to activate some kind of weapon." It's a dead man switch, Dr. Yoonji realized, studying her sensors. If they can't win, they're going to try to take us with them. That energy signature, it's similar to our own quantum dissolution technology. Emperor Kethvar's final message was broadcast on all frequencies. "If the Vorlani Empire must die, then we will take our murderers with us. Let the galaxy remember that we did not go quietly into extinction." The weapon on the planet's surface was charging rapidly. In minutes, it would release a quantum cascade that would destroy everything in the system, human and Vorlani alike. "All ships emergency phase shift," Jinwoo ordered. "Get us out of here." But as the human fleet began to retreat, something unexpected happened. Major Jisoo, still aboard the Dominion of Stars, activated the cascade virus she had been holding in reserve. Instead of targeting the human ships, the planet's weapon turned its aim toward the Vorlani homeworld itself. "What's happening?" Emperor Kethvar demanded, watching his displays in horror. "The targeting system has been compromised. His weapons," officer reported. "The weapon is aimed at the planet's core. It will crack the world in half." Jisoo appeared on the flagship's bridge, no longer bothering to maintain her Vorlani disguise. Her true human form was revealed, tall, powerful, and radiating the controlled fury that had driven her species for 500,000 years. "Emperor," she said calmly, "you wanted to take us with you. Instead, your own weapon will destroy your world. Fitting, don't you think? The Vorlani Empire will end the same way it began, with the mass murder of innocents." But as Jisoo spoke these words, she felt something change inside her mind. The memory programming was fighting against something else, a growing sense of horror at what she was about to allow to happen. 3 billion people were about to die. Not soldiers, not the architects of ancient genocide, but ordinary civilians who had never harmed anyone. Children who had never heard of Earth. Artists who had created beauty in